On the line this morning, we're fortunate to have my guest. His name is John Wilhoit. John is, he's got a website, johnwilhoit.com. He's been a guest on the show before a couple of times, and I'll list in the show notes the episodes because they were extremely popular and very informative. John is a real estate expert. He's an author of multiple books, 5 books, I believe, is the total now. And he's based in Columbia, Missouri, but spent a lot of time out in Los Angeles, as he tells me. John, welcome back to the program. How are you doing?
Good to see you, and we're actually seeing each other for the first time, I think, in reference to doing these shows.
Yeah, actually,
Technology.
yeah, and for our listeners, I don't talk about this enough. Typically, most of the shows are recorded on Skype. Using the video. There are some times when that's not possible, but as often as it is, we do make a video copy. So if you would care to see the faces that you're listening to, you're more than welcome to go out and check out Commercial Real Estate Pro Network on YouTube, and you can see the video version of this. So yeah, you're right. This is the first time we've seen each other face to face. It's funny how often it happens. You know somebody's voice, but wouldn't recognize them if they walked in the door there. But we're fortunate to have that this time.
We've both got a face for radio, so let's see how this translates.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm trying out my shaggy beard here look there. Not winning too many points that way, but anyway. John, glad to have you back. And before we get going here, I wanted to see if you could share with the listeners a little bit about your background before we jump into this.
Sure. I'm a real estate asset manager by trade. I've been in the business a long time, predominantly as an institutional commercial asset manager, predominantly in multifamily. I've worked all over the United States on deals for government, for private sector, for institutional investors, for individual investors. And this is what I do. So as a backdrop to that, I started writing and teaching, providing content through johnwilhoit.com that focuses on home ownership, focuses on real estate investing, and property management. And we don't want to drop off property management because every owner of real estate really needs to have a very good, a high quality, an expert level understanding of property management, because that's what affects or impacts your ownership more than anything else other than the capital stack. So those are the 3 things that we focus on johnwilhoit.com. And here with Darren, we've talked about markets, we've talked about trends, we've talked about quality of property, how to rate assets. And today we're talking about big trends in real estate, which is basically, I think for us, probably the most generic, but also one that really focuses on the here and now. So this is probably a little less evergreen than maybe some of the other shows that we've done, but there's been such significant changes post-recession on how real estate acts and interacts with our community at large.
No, absolutely, and I'm really kind of excited to talk about this because I think it is very topical, and the real estate market is definitely changing due to these trends of lifestyle and how they're affecting the real estate. So I'm excited to go through this with you. I'm going to ask you, and you tell me how you want to approach this. How should we get into this? Do you want to talk about the mobility first? Is that where we should start?
Yeah, American mobility.
All right. So tell me, when you say American mobility, is that are we increasing? Is it decreasing? What is the trend there?
If you were to look at American mobility from a business perspective, particularly of retail or local service providers like U-Haul, and I'm using them as a very high-level barometer of American mobility, because U-Haul tells us on their website and through their reports where people are moving to, how often they're moving, which direction people are moving to. And I'll give you a recent example that's a personal example, but it's one that's reflective of the larger markets. I have a friend that was moving from the Carolinas to the DC metro area. And because he was moving from the Carolinas and going north, they basically gave him the truck for free. The truck was $100 for the trip, plus gas, of course. And he couldn't hardly believe it that he could get this 16-foot or 18-foot truck for $100 to go so many hundreds of miles. So he asked the question, what's up with this? And the response was, we need those trucks north because they're not coming south. We need those trucks north so that they can go to other places, and we have too many that are down here. So we're basically paying you to drive this truck to the Baltimore area for us. So that's, a very, very small tell. It's not reflective of the larger market, of course, but it has a tell about mobility and where people are moving to. So go to uhaul.com and use some of their resources. And it's really underlying a market research tool for even larger businesses to tell us where people are moving to, tell us where trends are occurring. Are people moving into Dallas and away from Houston? Or is in Texas, is everything funneling to the south? I don't know the answer to that, but I bet you uhaul.com would give us some insight. And if not there, then in their corporate reports, because they basically tell us the number of miles and the direction of change in terms of where people are moving to. But in aggregate, mobility is really decreasing, particularly post-recession. When the recession occurred, everyone hunkered down, right? Everyone knows that children remained with their parents longer. They didn't leave the nest at 21, 22. If they could, they left the nest at 25, 26, and sometimes older. So that event that occurred really changed the demographic profile of this country for an extended period. Because when people don't leave the nest, they don't marry, and they don't start into the job process as a young professional where they may run into or be available for further job changes, meaning moving to a different place, even within the same company, or looking at job opportunities somewhere else. It's really a mindset. When you have to have food, shelter, and water, and you have those three things where you are, particularly when things in the economy are dour, people are less apt to want to move someplace else where they may not have food, shelter, or water. And as much as the American mentality is one of entrepreneurship and risk and self-improvement, that recession really put a significant damper on what people were willing to do. And that has in turn changed our community, our larger society, into one that has less willingness to move, less willingness to be mobile for the sake of opportunity. And part of that is they can find opportunity where they are. In our current economy with practically full employment, you don't have to move to find opportunity today. But transition that back 5 years ago, and there was no reason or cause to move because there was no opportunity to move to. So those two things occurring one after the other has really decreased the level of mobility in the United States.
That's interesting. The lack of opportunity to the oversupply of opportunity. In both cases, nobody moving kind of thing. And I think I've heard that from just different things I've read and stuff. How employers have actually sought out where are the people, and gone to like different places to open up a call center or whatever it is they're looking for, or the type. Yeah, where the people are, that's where they're going to take their business, as opposed to try and draw the people to them, kind of thing. It's kind of an interesting change on that.
And it's also reflective of rents, because in more, or I should say, less urban environments, rents are in essence stagnant. Whereas you always hear about rental increases, you never hear about rental decreases. Outside of major metropolitans, rents are not moving the same way as they do in a major metropolitan. And let me give you two examples. Chicago and San Francisco in the last 2 years have had more than 20,000 persons move into the city within 2 miles of City Hall. That's a significant number, even though those are large cities. That's 20,000 more people than they had 2 years ago. And where did those people come from? They came from the suburbs and further out. They came into the city for opportunity, for jobs, and oh, by the way, they also need some place to live, right? So with that, that's a hairbringer of why rents are increasing in the urban core and not moving much at all as you get further and further away from the urban core. I say to people often, when you're looking at a property to purchase, if there's less than 40,000 people within a 5-mile radius, then that right there is enough of a cause to pause in terms of looking at that asset. Because if there's less than 40,000 people within that 5-mile radius, then we want to determine or understand the direction of change in terms of demographics, in terms of population growth, in terms of mobility, but also competitive properties. And in more rural environments, or I should say secondary, frontier, and tertiary markets, tax credit deals are still being built. And that's whether or not there's an increase in population or not. So when new tax credit deals pop up in non-urban environments, they're competing head-to-head with market rate properties. And that's going to become more problematic as time goes on. As every state gets an allocation of tax credits every year, they say that they want to build those units within the city, within the urban core. That's very, very hard to do. It's an extended term. It takes a lot of work, a huge administrative overhead to do so. So a lot of those tax credit dollars go to smaller communities, whether or not those smaller communities need the housing or not. And that makes for an imbalance in supply on affordable housing because we want to get the units built. But it doesn't necessarily mean we're building the units in those places that require or have the highest need.
So let me ask you about on that note right there, because you mentioned how the metros where the jobs are, the rents are increased, and that's based on supply, if I'm understanding right, just based on the intent was to build in those areas, but there's not, or the process and the land, et cetera, is not necessarily available. So because we have this want to build these projects, we go further out, and we end up creating more of an excess or a more supply than demand, thereby suppressing the rents in these further out markets. So is that? No, go ahead.
And further accelerating the need for affordable housing in the city. So
right.
If it's $240,000 to build an affordable unit in the city of Chicago, then that's a lot of money to build a single affordable unit, right? But the timeline for doing so is 2 to 5 years from the time that those tax credits are let until that unit is available for someone to move into. And that doesn't take into consideration demolition and other natural events that take property or housing out of circulation. You know, things happen, right? Property gets old, fires occur, demolition occurs, change occurs. So when affordable units go out of service, they're not replaced nearly as rapidly as they should be just to maintain the level of affordable housing that's in a larger city. So it's a constant battle.
And as you said,
so we add.
No, you go further out, you add more supply, where you
add more supply.
Housing's more
which
affordable.
Requires the people to,
but now they've got
right?
the commute, right?
So you're requiring people of lesser means to now have transportation to get to the job centers.
Right.
And that in and of itself creates an entirely different negative circle of why we need the housing closer to the population centers versus further away.
Right.
And this is $2 gas, right? It's still, so what if gas is $2 if you don't have a car? You know, it's great to have a place to live, but if you have a place to live, you still need a job. Where are the jobs? Jobs are either going to be in hyper suburbs or in the city core, one of those two. So we'll talk about hyper suburbs here in a little bit.
Got it.
Think about, and I'm not advocating the preaching of Elon Musk, but he has been the one recently that's mentioned universal income as more and more jobs are replaced by technology. At some point, will we get to that point where we have to give people income just to live because there are no jobs? I don't know the answer to that, but I know if we're talking about it now, then 10 and 20 years from now, it has a higher probability of occurring than if we're not talking about it at all.
Right. Right. No, it's
but I know that population density is increasing. I know that mobility is decreasing. And I know that whereas job creation is fine today, what we don't know is how many jobs are being replaced by technology each and every quarter, each and every year, year over year. I don't know if anybody really has a handle on that, on how many jobs we're losing to technology, which is great for efficiency, but we still have to do something with these human hands and minds of ours.
Yeah, no, that
Anyway,
is
that's more of a
well, but I think it's a realistic. It's a riddle that will continue to play out here. I don't think it's a something that's done. I think we're just kind of the front edge of this thing.
Yeah, but it will affect housing. Absolutely, will affect housing. We know this.
Got it.
In terms of the price of housing.
Right. So we some of the big trends here. So we talked a little bit about American mobility, and your sense is based on what you're seeing, and you clearly made the point, is that we're becoming less mobile, which is thinking about it from my lifetime, that would be kind of it does seem kind of counterintuitive because of. I grew up back in the Midwest, and I'm out on the West Coast now. That seems like quite a range, but as far as or quite a move. But now that I'm here, it's not like I'm going all over the place, kind of thing. And just your
yeah, right.
Yeah, and then but even talking about how the recession affected the mindset. I think that's the key right there, is that mindset. And then the lack of jobs, and now where are the jobs? The jobs are in the cities, and that's where you got to go to be. So, all right, let's move on to our the second trend that you had laid out here, and I think we're calling this how we shop.
Right. How we shop and its impact upon retail, which is another segment of real estate. So everyone knows that we are over-mauled. Right, we have too many malls today as compared to the increases or the flatness of our population growth. We also know we have too much retail in terms of space, but we don't exactly know what to do with that. And Sears is the best and worst example, one that has a huge retail conglomerate of the past, which is still trying to figure out what to do with all of its real estate. And reading the Wall Street Journal, you can find out more than you ever want to know about what's occurred with Sears over the last 10 years. But in essence, none of it's good. And what Sears has lived through now, regional malls and regional or power centers are now starting to live through also, where the fragmentation is so significant. We're looking to see what pieces we can keep and what pieces we can get rid of and why. Macy's has closed over 100 stores in the last 2 years. That's another retail behemoth that hasn't figured out what to do with the changing environment and how people shop. They're attempting to figure it out, but they haven't figured it out yet. So these are places with huge retail footprints that have had to change the way they do business because of the way business has changed in the way that we shop. And think about 10 years into the future. I just wonder if we won't have, the real estate that's now being used for retail, we will figure out a way to reuse that space in some other format. I don't know what it'll be. Presently, the regional retailers are looking at changing their environment from just shopping to being entertainment and shopping. So they're bringing in restaurants, movie theaters, live music, poetry, anything that it takes to get people to congregate in their arenas, in their areas of shopping, to keep the dollars flowing through those properties. So that's the current trend. But I wonder if 10 years from now, we won't see on your street or my street, Darren, a bus that has Macy's on the side, that's a driverless bus that comes to our neighborhood the second Tuesday of every month. And people can go into the bus and samples of what's in the store, touch and feel, and get a feel for what's available, and then turn to their kiosk right there on that same mobile platform, which in this case has wheels, and place our order and walk back into our house. So I don't know if that's the way if that's going to occur or not, but with the significant changes in technology, more and more of us shop from home. We can see that it's no longer just Black Friday or Cyber Monday that's taking retail dollars. It's taking retail dollars all along the timeline of a year, and local communities are feeling the pinch based on their losses in tax revenue. And they're becoming more than just percentage points now. They're becoming multiple percentage points, 5 and 10 and 15% of a local community's budget, where they were relying on retail tax dollars to support roads, schools, administration, police, and fire. So how do we replace those dollars? One of the reasons that real estate works so well for counties, cities, municipalities is because the real estate doesn't move, right? They're able to tax it. And if you want to keep your property, you will pay your tax. That's the way it works, right? We're not going to not let you own that there unless you give some tribute, going back to Roman days, some tribute to the local community for us assisting you in keeping your property in a safe and decent environment. Well, does that mean real estate taxes will be exponentially increasing as retail revenue or tax revenue decreases? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that the way we shop and the way that that is changing will have a significant impact on not just retail, but also on local communities and how they determine their assessments on the local property, because that's always where they go. Whenever there's something that decreases, the tax increase goes onto the local real estate, because those owners really don't have any place else to go unless they just flat out sell.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, when you go and you play it out to the local, the tax base. I think so many people, they think about the whether it be the loss of convenience or just the migration of their habits. I know now even I've got a client here locally that's considering, being an Amazon, I guess, delivery driver, a fleet of trucks. And I think at one point Amazon was using the postal service on Sundays for the delivering their packages and stuff, and just how much of the activity that used to be engaged in going to the mall or the retailer to try on and shop and spend time and money at a physical place. Now you Google, point click, do your PayPal or whatever it is you pay, and a couple days later there's a package on your front step, and that whole that whole interaction that you used to engage in is essentially going away. And I think that it is interesting, because I think that the conversations I've had with others sounds like it is what's occurring is that people, and maybe it's, you said the overmauled, that we are overmauled. I mean, that they clearly built more than we could support. But do you think there's any kind of a sense of we've got enough stuff? I mean, is there a generational thing where there's people are not looking for stuff, they're looking more for entertainment type things to do rather than things to buy?
Well, part of that also, I think, can be rooted in our most recent recession, where the younger people had to stay home. They didn't have a place to put more stuff. Not only did they not have the income because of the employment situation, but they also were not going out on their own. And even if we're talking about more stuff, the big ticket items are when you create a new household, right? Where there's furniture, appliances, all the accoutrements that people buy with household formation. And that really came to a screeching halt. So that didn't happen for a month or 6. That happened for a year or 5. I mean, it was an extended period. So the mindset of that entire generation was, I don't need any stuff. I haven't had any stuff up until now. So why would I go get a bigger place so I can have more stuff? And I think you're right. That's not the mindset of younger people. I mean, people my age and older, I know too many of them that have a second garage full of stuff.
Right.
And I'll ask on occasion, what are you going to do with all that stuff? Because your kids aren't keeping it. So why are you keeping it? That motorcycle from the 60s, that ping pong table from the 70s, and that refrigerator that's got, Chicago Bears tattooed on the front, side, and back from the 80s. All of those things, they're part of the past.
Yeah, and they kind of weigh you down, and then it's just, you're just waiting for the estate sale, yard sale, whatever that is, or the fire that destroys it all, kind of thing. I just, yeah, I know my house is full of stuff. I'd love to skinny it down,
Yeah,
but
I talked with a vendor yesterday that's contemplated moving from Southern California to either Spain or Portugal just for a year. And his premise was, now that our kids are out of the house, it's just me and my wife. We don't really need all the stuff that we have. So why don't we just, he can work from anywhere. Why don't we just go to a low cost environment for a year instead of paying $2,500 a month for rent to be in this community? Let's go to another place where it's $900 per month. Enjoy another culture, drink the wine, and just stay for a year and see how we like it. If we don't, that's fine. We'll come back to this environment. But that level of mobility can only occur if you don't have stuff to carry around with you.
It's funny is that whole mindset is something that technology, makes available, which is kind of counter to the first point we made about the lack of mobility, because there is that, when you have the ability, I think there is the recognition of, like you're making the point. But I think the lack of mobility goes back to kind of it really is that economic event that happened that changed the mindset of so many of a kind of a scarcity kind of a thing, rather than a like the person you're talking with who has, kids are out of the house, don't need all this stuff, have some ability kind of thing. So interesting.
But going back to our initial point, part of that lack of mobility is because jobs are now plentiful in the local environment, in the local city. So it's a move that's not necessary to obtain employment.
Right.
And 5 years ago, somewhere else would not have garnered you employment because there were no jobs. There was no job growth, So there was no reason to move 5 years ago because there was no place to move to where there was job growth. And presently, there's no reason to move because the job growth is happening in the local economy.
Right. No, again,
which leads to mobility.
Right. No, it's interesting how the answer is the same in both, right? No jobs, why move?
Right.
Jobs are here, why move? So
yeah.
That's interesting.
People are staying put longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the shopping thing, I think, is one that's really going to continue to change things. I mean, when you think about, and I think so far what I've seen, and you kind of tell me if you see otherwise or differently, but it seems like the biggest affected party to the real estate industry has been, in a negative way, has been the big retail malls. They've been just...
The reason, it's because we have not only the internet of everything, but we have the shopping on everything online. So you have that as an option. And it doesn't matter if the product you're buying is a $2 can of soup or a $10,000 diamond. Presently, I think Costco is one of the largest sellers of diamonds in the U.S. And are people going into the Costco store to buy these diamonds, or are they just clicking online and having them delivered along with their soup from Costco? But I do wonder in the long run how that changes our social behavior when there's fewer opportunities to interact with other humans, even though we're doing commerce when we're interacting with them. Buying flowers, buying groceries, the things that people do in their everyday lives. Social interaction is far less than it was. So that has ballooned into online communities. But, even you and I, we've never met, we've never shook hands. So does that change the nature of our relationship because we've not done that ever? Even though you and I probably spent 5 or 6 hours together in the last year or two, I've never looked you across the table and shared a cup of coffee or a beer. Does that make our relationship deeper if we're in person? Probably. You and I will definitely meet in person one day, but it wasn't a requisite for us to have a relationship. But taking that into the larger society, and I'm bringing this back to real estate, taking that back to the larger society, as more and more of our shopping occurs through online means, through electronic means, it in essence means we have less contact with other humans. Because a lot of our interaction with humans is vis-a-vis commerce. Again, whether it's buying milk, eggs, and butter, getting your oil changed, just everyday life, talking with the person who's cutting the grass. If we're all hunkered down inside in our air-conditioned operations centers with a laptop, there's fewer and fewer people that we will interact with on a consistent or daily basis.
Right.
Which is why the changes in how we shop, why that's such a big deal.
No, it is huge, and I think everything. I'm kind of curious where it ends, because clearly there's been a big change just in the last 10 years, and how will it? I think that people will seek people out. There's a need for the interaction, but if it's more
entertainment shopping option is appealing to retail centers now, because it does give people an opportunity to get out of their abode, to commune, to interact with other people.
Right.
That's only a recent, really, 10 years or less, where that's been occurring on a mass basis.
Right. I hear you. Well, I guess on that one, stay tuned. I think more will be revealed here.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. We've been through the American mobility, a little bit about how we shop. Let's talk about hyper suburbs. This is one I'm really kind of interested to hear more about.
And it correlates to mobility, and it correlates to how we shop. And when I talk about hyper suburbs, I'm referring to places that may or may not be attached to a major metropolitan, but they are in essence more and more self-sufficient in how they operate. And I'll use a few examples that are not, none of them are true examples where you can segregate one from the other, but they are becoming more and more segregated just based on job growth and what's occurring in those communities. So a hyper suburb is one where you can work, shop, and go to school without leaving. And think about that for a minute. How many places represent that, where they're outside of a metropolitan area, but you can work, shop, and go to school without leaving a 5 or 10 mile radius? So the community I live in is a community of 100,000 persons, but I'm 100 miles from a major metropolitan. So obviously there's people here that work, live, and shop, and don't have to leave the community to do any of those things. But a hyper suburb would be an area such as Columbia, Maryland, which is smack dab in the middle between D.C. and Baltimore. But it's become such a highly sophisticated small community that there are executive level jobs within that community, so that people can stay, and irrespective of where they are along the career path, and not have to leave that community. And that's just one example.
Let me ask you something, because as you're describing this, it brings to mind community out here in Portland, just west of Portland. We've got the Silicon Forest, where you've got some significant tech companies, Intel and et cetera. Hillsboro, Oregon, and it has literally kind of grown into what you're talking about. Originally, the light rail system that went from Hillsboro to Portland was promoted as an opportunity for people to go from, here to there. But what's happened is the jobs are in Hillsboro, the housing has grown up in Hillsboro, the ability to entertain and educate are in Hillsborough. So the rail is more of a when you want to go to the city kind of an activity.
Right.
And it's interesting, though, as you say,
Right.
because it's literally it's. I mean, there were fields that were bare that they put the rail right down the middle, and all of a sudden the housing all sprouted up around it, and
Yeah.
people are living and educating and working there in Hillsborough.
Yeah. And not having to leave their community because they have employment, they have schools, they have housing within that community. So 50 years ago, when Columbia, Maryland was developing, anyone who lived there left the city during the day to go to their job in D.C. or Baltimore. And so the place was a ghost town during the day, even in the 80s. But as the place has evolved, it's not connected to even Baltimore or D.C., but yet there is more activity there during the day because people are not having to leave exclusively for employment opportunities. Another example would be Fort Collins. It's close to Denver, but it's a large enough community. It has its own university that people don't have to go to Denver for shopping, for schools, for employment. They can live in Fort Collins and go to Denver, like you were saying, with the light rail for something that they want to do in the city, whether it's entertainment or a sporting event. But other than that, there's really no reason for them to go into the city. Phoenix and Mesa, they're close together. They're basically connected. But Mesa's large enough now that if you don't go to Phoenix, you don't go to Phoenix because there's everything that you need right there in Mesa. And the best example is the disparity prior that is now complete between Austin, Texas, and Round Rock. Round Rock was this place out there in the hinterlands from Austin, but it's beginning that transition where there are more and more jobs in Round Rock so that everyone that lives on Round Rock doesn't have to commute to Austin just for the sake of employment. So it's an evolution that occurs. But that hyper suburb is becoming more and more prevalent, as we were talking about earlier, as jobs sink into those locales. And where we were talking about earlier, rural communities, in essence, too often having too much housing, with suburbs or secondary markets or secondary cities, those also, and today, they have job centers, they have office parks, they have maybe not high rises, maybe they only have 5, 10, or 20 5-story office buildings, but those are experiencing lower occupancy rates, meaning higher occupancy, I should say, than or equal to their city counterparts, whereas in years past they had significantly higher vacancy. But today, as those hyper suburbs become more of a place for people to live out their days and have a job and have schools and have shopping, those particular commercial office projects are experiencing more than a renaissance. Their occupancy rates are better than they've ever been.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It kind of goes back to the the jobs topic. We keep coming back to that. You gotta have work so you can live, right? So you can have the housing and the food and shelter and
yeah.
go do the retail and all that stuff. But how it's morphed from, I think, back if you go back a cycle where the automobile and the interstate and all that stuff kind of made the suburbs kind of post World War II was kind of the people moved out from the city, and now everybody's moving back to the city. That's where the jobs are, and these economic or these hyper suburbs. I mean, even within the hyper suburbs, they're more of a. Let me ask you this, because this is what I think, or I'm kind of going with this, is that typically in my mindset before, suburbia was basically a place to live. There was some shopping, like a grocery store, and some minor shopping, but it didn't have the economic vitality rather, that like a downtown center would have. But right now, like kind of what you're talking about, these hyper suburbs, they do really have that, don't they? You have all the live, work, play, educate aspects there.
Yeah, and it's partly due to the advent of big box stores. Well, that's not something that's been around for 100 years. They've been around for 40 years, and frankly less than that, but they started about 40 years ago. But big box stores really are nothing other than a different form of a distribution center. So as those distribution centers, and let me just pick on Home Depot and Lowe's, come into a community, you don't have to go to another community for any one of the 100,000 products or 50,000 products that they stock. They are right there in your community. And the other thing that's changed is if they don't have it, they will get it for you. So if you're building a house and you need rafters, well, you can't go to Home Depot and buy a rafter, but you can go and take it home that day. But you can go to Home Depot and order rafters for your roof, and they'll be delivered on a schedule that's set based on the fact that they do this consistently. So that's something that's changed dramatically. Those big box stores, what we call big box stores today, were in essence localized distribution centers. And what's grown up around those or within those is communities that have everything else that they need. So now we bring to those hyper suburbs the call centers and the other distribution centers that will deliver to a 50, 100, or 150 mile radius. So you still don't have to go into the city to get all those other things you need, because you can do that with a click of a mouse without even having to go to the retail store to order what you're looking for. So that gives us fewer reasons to go into the city if we're in a hyper suburb. I can go to Best Buy and get anything I need for on the electronics front. And if it's not there, it's probably at a Sam's Club or a Costco. If it's specialized, I can go to a Staples. There's probably 3 or 4 grocery stores, maybe not a Whole Foods in every community, but there's 3 or 4 grocery stores. There's probably an Aldi's. There's probably a Trader Joe's. All of these specialty stores that were at one time only in the city are now part of those hyper suburbs, where it's not a necessity to go into the city to get those same things.
It's funny is how this ties back to the how we shop. Originally we were talking kind of more of the online model, but the reality is that those big box stores have kind of created, like you said, the hyper suburbs. They've kind of been like would you say they're kind of like an anchor to a hyper suburb?
Yeah, they go hand in hand. Yeah. I grew up in Ventura, California, and in the small community that I grew up in, the population is the same today as it was when I was there, but the retail landscape has changed dramatically. And the retail landscape means that people that live in that community, they don't even have to go 10 miles to get to basically whatever it is they need. Whereas before, it was a true necessity to go into Los Angeles to get those things. And today, you have options.
Right.
And those options extend beyond Walmart, because 20 years ago, that was the distribution center in the local community.
Right. No, and Walmart kind of proved that model. They could make money out, and it didn't have to be in the big centers. So interesting.
Yeah.
Well, interesting.
And now Amazon is making Walmart change their model yet again.
Right. Yeah, they're going from, I think Amazon, if I understand right, they're going from clicks to bricks. Are they kind of creating some retail options? I mean, I don't know how. I know didn't they just purchase Whole Foods? Was that the grocery store?
Yeah.
Be interesting to see how that all plays out. So.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Whole Foods store reduced in size as they use the other part of the store as distribution centers for their products. So they'll have a bricks and sticks footprint, rapidly.
Right. No,
and they have communities.
Exactly, where their clients already are.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I did a study, this is several years ago in California, about Los Angeles, where I made a correlation between Four Seasons hotels and the beginning of Starbucks. And when Starbucks first opened, they basically hung really close to high-income communities. So you could see almost anywhere, and this has been more than 15 years ago, where there was a Four Seasons hotel, a Starbucks was within a stone's throw. Of course, it's changed dramatically since then, but when they were initially opening stores, they were always close to or within high-income communities.
Well, it certainly makes sense to go where your client is. I'm guessing they understood their client base or their potential client base, as opposed to going elsewhere. And I think that's becoming more and more, or just the data and the ability to execute that, based on the data to put yourself in a place to be more successful is really, really affecting decisions, investments, etc. It's interesting. John, the big trends in real estate here. These are interesting. Kind of thought provoking, and I guess as a kind of a wrap up question, do you have any kind of sense of where the next one's going, or do you have any kind of a feel for how any of these will morph the next time, or?
I think that we underestimate the impact of the changes in technology. As much as we think it's going so fast, it's really going even faster than we, the viewing public, realize. And we think that Uber and Lyft are a really big thing, and it is, because even the automobile manufacturers are changing their models so that they can provide product fleets for that type of a service. But even last year, Honda the car company, released a $6 million jet, and it's the fastest thing in the sky for its size. So how long until we have not only driverless cars, but driverless trucks, and then pilotless planes? And I submit that all of those things could potentially happen within our lifetime. And those will change our landscape more than we can think about or understand today.
Yeah, no kidding.
How it affects real estate.
Yeah, well,
I don't know how it affects real estate, but it affects daily lives.
Well, it will affect it based on how we live and shop and eat and educate and work, all of that stuff. It'll definitely be affected. But yeah, it's kind of funny.
Today, I'm willing to get into a driverless car. Oh, there's my gardener right outside my window.
Oh yeah, no.
Did you
got the mower going there? Huh?
I didn't tell him not to come today.
Yeah. I usually have the blower in the background.
Yeah. Well, today I'm willing to get into a driverless car. I don't know how I feel about getting into a pilotless plane, but those things will occur probably sooner than we want to think.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think technology is moving faster than we believe, and literally the fact we're looking at each other is right out of the Jetsons, and here we're talking about planes and pilotless planes kind of possibilities. So very, very exciting. John, what's the best way for listeners to get in touch with you if they wanted to learn more about you? And if you would, before we when you give the contact information, tell a little bit about what's available on your site, so people know what to look for there.
Sure. John Wilhoit. Start over. JohnWilhoit.com was just released in the summer of 2017, so it's a work in process, but we have to wait on the gardener to go by now, because that's what we do in live radio.
That's right here.
He's going rather fast, but I think he's going to be another minute.
Okay.
Yeah. I can see two more cuts before he goes back up the hill.
Oh, doing the turns
Right
there.
outside my window. Yeah, doing the turn behind the riding lawnmower.
Yep.
I could just get him to feed the horses. All right. Pretty sure he's headed up the hill. Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Made the tall grass short. That's good.
Okay. We did, yeah. All right. JohnWilhoit.com was just released in the summer of 2017, so it's a work in process, but I focused it on three areas. One is home ownership, one is real estate investing, and the third is property management. And those are the three areas that we'll focus on there. This summer, I'm also releasing a podcast. I hope to do half as well as my good friend Darren has done with that podcast. But we will exclusively focus on home ownership, real estate investing, and property management, and no other topics. So that's coming in August, September of 2017. And then in the fall, I'll be releasing a membership site that will have consistent webinars, hopefully once a week or at least 2 or 3 times a month, along with an online video catalog, which I'm building now, which will be part of that membership site. So all things in process. This summer I released the book 12 Steps to Home Ownership, which is doing great. And then this fall or later in the year, I'm releasing Rent Roll Triangle, which is all about how to review and what's the best way? Rent roll. My book, How to Read a Rent Roll, was all about rent roll analysis, and Rent Roll Triangle really delves into the elasticity of income and how to measure quality income in rental property. So that's coming out this fall. But if you go to johnwilhoit.com and subscribe, you'll be well aware of it as it comes out into the marketplace.
Great. Well, John, thanks again for talking, and nice to see you this time. I look forward to doing it again soon, and wish you all the best with your book and also your podcast when it comes out. I'll look forward to listening to that.
Thank you. And when I see you in Portland, I'll stay at the Four Seasons and we'll go to Starbucks.
Yeah. Now we'll go out and check out some of the hyper suburbs. I'll show you a hyper suburb out here. Yeah. So
we'll take that bullet train all the way out to Hillsborough.
There you go. There you go. So anyway, John, appreciate it. And again, we look forward to doing it again. For our listeners, if you like this show, share it with someone you know. It's real easy to do. Use the share button on the show, and you can share John's information into the big trends in real estate. That's all we've got for you this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.